Here's a recap of the most important Game of Thrones news from about the past week. Or so.
Warning, spoilers in this video for the final season. Don't watch if you don't want spoilers. But you know you secretly do, so just give in to the dark side and bask in its glory. Okay, so first we got a teaser for Season 8, and I did a breakdown of that last week. Well, a live chat and then a separate video breakdown. Jesus, was that last week already? Being an adult and remembering things is really hard. The teaser wasn't much and didn't include any Season 8 footage, but basically let us know what we've known for years. The Battle of Ice and Fire, the living versus the dead, is happening in this final season. And even though there wasn't a lot to the teaser, of course many of us put on our finest tinfoil hats and made a lot of random theories. So you can always watch one of those videos to hear all those crazy predictions and speculation. Next, both Miguel, a director for Game of Thrones, and the Night King's actor talked about the final season some. It was during an interview they talked about the third episode of the last season and what it will entail, saying, "In the third part of the last season, there is a battle that the creators intend to be the biggest in television history. Almost the full episode will be about the battle. It will take about 1 hour." The Night King's actor also talked about the final season, saying, "I can tell you that there will be no shortage of surprises in Season 8. There will be a lot of dragons, the Night King will return, and in the season, the biggest battle for the throne will be completed." So in the third episode of the season, we'll see the Night King and his army attack Winterfell, which makes me a bit nervous because that's smack dab in the middle of the season, but I don't know, I'm sure it'll be fine. And he wasn't exaggerating either that it's going to be the biggest battle on television, because from all the leaks we've seen from the battle at Winterfell, it's gonna be crazy. We also got more information on the final battle from one of the showrunners who said, "Having the largest battle doesn't sound very exciting. It actually sounds pretty boring. Part of our challenge, and really Miguel's challenge, is how to keep that compelling. We've been building towards this since the very beginning. It's the living against the dead, and you can't do that in a 12-minute sequence." Personally, I don't know, the idea of one big battle to finish up the conflict in the final season sounds like shit, but I'm sure it'll be fine. These guys are all professionals. From other interviews, we've been told that the battle at Winterfell is going to make the Battle of the Bastards look like a joke, or rather a theme park, and that during the battle, we're gonna follow several characters as they fight to survive. I'm all for that because following Bronn during the Field of Fire 2.0 was a lot of fun, and I'd love to see that done for a bunch of characters during this big battle in the final season. I'm especially interested in seeing how Sansa handles the attack on Winterfell. I have to imagine some whites are going to get in the castle and she'll have to fight for survival as well. I'm sure we'll see her running through the halls, locking herself in a room, and then Arya coming to rescue her ass. And maybe some people don't survive this battle that we absolutely love, because Brienne's actress, when doing an interview this week and talking about the final season, said, "You're going to need therapy." So that's super comforting. And I feel like maybe that's hinting towards some fucked up shit like Dany dying in childbirth, or Jon dying again to defeat the others, or maybe Brienne dying in Jaime's arms, which I'm sure is going to happen at this point. Of course, she also said, "I think just the show ending is going to send all of the world into professional help." So again, super comforting. And cue the most generic response I've seen from fans all the fucking time.
"If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention."
This is like the Game of Thrones equivalent of what a basic bitch says.
In other news, when Kit Harington was asked if he would ever return to Game of Thrones in any capacity, he responded, "Not on your life." So I think Kit Harington is happy to be done with Game of Thrones, even if we wanted more seasons. On the other hand, the newest Mountain actor would be down for returning to the world of Game of Thrones in a prequel or spin-off. From all his interviews, he absolutely loved being on the show and would love to be back. But of course, he hasn't been chained to it for 10 years. Understandably, Kit is ready to be done. Which he also talked about the final season and on Mountain, saying, "I myself am super excited to see the season. I've never been this excited before. I'm a fan myself, and this was the hardest season that I have done ever for Game of Thrones. It was the most difficult.
like physically and mentally for me. I cannot go into any specific details, but I think I'm allowed to say that some of the days were very long for me. For example, I think one day went up 18 hours, and that was very tiring, and it is very hard on the body when you're that long filming. Okay, my normal subscribers know me. I'm generally not the craziest conspiracy person. Generally. But he trained that hard for the final season. I mean, look at what Unmountain has been doing lately. Standing around. All those long hours in training for this final season, that isn't for more standing or simply smashing some guy's head into the wall. That guy is going to fuck some people up in this final season. So let me put on my shiny tinfoil hat. I think this means the Whites do invade King's Landing, or at least Dany's forces do, and the Mountain has to fight to keep Cersei alive. I also think this means we're definitely getting CleganeBowl. Fight me, bitch. It's happening. Alright, let's move on from that definite confirmation that we're getting CleganeBowl and talk about the CCXP Game of Thrones experience. I went over the CCXP in another video, but here is the best bit of information that we got from it. Maisie Williams confirmed that some of the most exciting things are coming in Season 8, and that we're going to see some more epic scenes from Arya, including some major kills, which still makes me hope we see her take down a White Walker. So start speculating what Arya's major kills for this final season will be.
Hey fantasy writers! George wants you to know that you need to do your research before writing, you lazy assholes. So George was asked whether it was true that fantasy writers don't have to do their own research, to which he responded,
"Well, bad fantasy writers don't do any research, but I do a great deal of research."
Which George's level of research is just insane.
The guy gave an example of how he read up on the history of a time period for 3 years to write one book. For Game of Thrones, he said he totally submerged himself in researching around our own Middle Ages, which he then admitted he wanted to see what he could steal from. He also explained, "There are fans out there who will call you if you make any mistake. So you have to know what the architecture of castles and the difference between a trebuchet and a catapult and between a crossbow and a longbow, and what kind of fabrics they use on medieval clothing, and when the zipper was invented. Hint, not the Middle Ages."
And George is also just not talking shit here or on a high horse. He's been called out plenty of times for mistakes he's made in his books. The funniest, I think, is Viserys' crown. People get really intense and I love it. Most of the time.
Speaking of Targaryens, HBO came out with a bunch of new Game of Thrones merch, and as I've come to expect of HBO's merch over the years, some of it is just awful. Hey, can you spot what's wrong with this t-shirt? Because I can. On merchandise though, George gave us a sneak peek of the 2020 A Song of Ice and Fire calendar, and it features our legendary ice spiders. Thank you, George. You always know exactly what I need. Now to wait for 2020. Although I have the 2019 calendar, I should really go find that and look through it. Maybe there are ice spiders in that one. Don't tell me if there are. I want to be surprised. Onwards, a new study came out showing your chances of surviving Game of Thrones. If you're one of the many very anti-women people I've met during my wonderful time on the internet, your suspicions were true. Bitches do get away with everything. Fucking sluts. According to the study, 56% of important characters died before the end of Season 7. I can think of a particular event that helped with that. And you're more likely to survive if you're a female, you're highborn, and you switched your allegiance at some point. Fucking bitches. It also helps if you're not as prominent in the show. In fact, John Bradley, Sam's actor, talked about this before, that Gilly and Sam have been relatively safe because they aren't right in the thick of the Game of Thrones. They aren't really on anyone's list and aren't in anyone's way for power, so most people just overlook them. I still think Gilly and Sam live to the very end too because of that. So I guess in conclusion with that, I'm sorry if you're a male, lowborn, loyal, or a prominent character, you're gonna die. Unfortunately, you have a 74% chance of dying from some injuries. But if you want to be burned, you got a lucky 12%. Dragon and direwolf related death is only 9%, so sorry if you've always dreamed of being a dragon snack. In other sad news, we aren't getting Richard Madden in the Game of Thrones reunion special. While we're getting Sean Bean and maybe Jason Momoa, Richard was busy and unable to attend, which is a huge bummer. The reunion special is planned to be included on Game of Thrones Season 1 through 8 DVD box set, which will come out in 2019, or so we're told. Or you can be like me, who just we'll wait for someone to put it up on YouTube because, you know, someone will do it. I'm not saying don't support HBO by not buying their merch, but I don't know. Those DVD box sets are expensive. Lastly, if you remember this epic as shit Game of Thrones tapestry, you can have another chance to gaze upon it in all its glory. The Game of Thrones touring exhibit is opening in Belfast in April of next year and will include this awesome piece of artwork. This is not the first time I've been jealous of Northern Ireland. Well, I wasn't jealous of Northern Ireland when I was a kid. They had some issues back then. But I am jealous now. Oh wait, I lied, real quick. I'm not sure why, and you can let me know if I'm not alone in this, but Kit's fake auditioning for How to Train Your Dragon was just hilarious. For some reason, watching him get his shit wrecked by a dragon was hilarious to me. Oh, and this part.
Be honest, Toothless, do I come across as too broody? Because half the time I'm just trying to remember where I left my keys.
Alright, so that is your Game of Thrones news recap. Like, subscribe, and let me know in the comment section down below. Are you nervous about the battle at Winterfell being in the middle of the season?